My name was Ahmad. I was a doctor, a healer, revered in the bustling halls of a Los Angeles hospital. Every day, I faced life and death, navigating through the chaos of cultures and faiths that collided within those emergency room walls. I wore my profession like armor, yet inside, I carried an emptiness that gnawed at my soul. Despite my unwavering devotion to my beliefs, I felt a profound disconnect, a shadow lurking in my heart as I recited my prayers. Then came the day when everything changed. An accident shattered my reality, plunging me into a darkness I never anticipated. For a fleeting moment, I lived what my science could not explain. I stood on the precipice of the beyond, and there, in the void, I encountered a light, an overwhelming, radiant presence, Jesus. He called my name with a purity that pierced through my confusion, unveiling a spiritual war that I had been blind to my entire life. In that moment, I realized the gravity of the veil my faith had placed over my eyes. The systems that governed my thoughts, my actions, were they truly serving a divine purpose or merely binding me to a cycle of fear and obligation? I returned to my life, burdened by a truth that felt like treason. Friends became strangers, family turned their backs, and the weight of guilt squeezed my heart. I was labeled a heretic for sharing my experience, but the light I had witnessed could not be extinguished. Now, I stand at a crossroad. A war rages within me. Drawn to the truth, I feel the restless pull of a new path. I dive into the depths of the scriptures, seeking solace in a community bathed in hope and redemption. My heart aches for the journey ahead. A silent prayer escapes my lips. I knew I had to share my story, to break the chains that sought to bind me and others in darkness. What I discovered was not merely a narrative of faith, but a mission that transcends my own turmoil. My transformation is underway, and I invite you to witness it. The truth is a sword, sharp and revealing, cutting through the illusions that bind us. Before we unveil this life-altering journey, drop a comment below. Where are you watching from, and what time is it in your corner of the world? And if you feel that tug in your heart for something deeper, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. This isn't just my testimony. It's a calling for all who seek the light in darkness. Stay tuned, because what lies ahead could change everything. The emergency room in Los Angeles was a cacophony of chaos and urgency, a microcosm of life and death interwoven with the pulse of diverse cultures and beliefs. As a doctor navigating this frantic environment, I was no stranger to the weight of critical decisions. Each day I encountered stories of heartbreak, resilience, and hope stretched thin across the fabric of human experience. But on one fateful night, everything changed when the boundary between science and faith blurred, leading me to an encounter that would transform my understanding of life itself. That evening began like any other. I moved swiftly between patients, attending to the wounded, the ailing, and the terrified, all while trying to maintain a sense of calm. But as I entered a room to assist with a particularly critical case, I felt an unfamiliar heaviness settle in my chest. The tension in the air seemed charged. Something significant was about to happen. As I worked, my mind began to drift. I wondered about the fragile nature of existence and the hidden structures that govern our lives. These thoughts brewed in the background, blending with the sounds of beeping machines and urgent voices. Then, in the midst of a medical crisis, my heart faltered. The next thing I knew, I was engulfed in darkness, slipping away from the sterile environment of the ER and into an otherworldly realm. This void wasn't frightening. It was enveloping, both comforting and disorienting. In that timeless space, I felt myself suspended between here and the beyond. Suddenly, a brilliant light pierced through the darkness, and out of that light stepped Jesus. His presence radiated warmth and love that transcended human understanding. In that sacred encounter, Jesus spoke to me without words. I felt the truth. He embodied seep into my very being. He revealed the hidden agenda at play in our society, the ways the elite weave deception into the fabric of our lives, wielding fear and division like weapons. I was shown visions of endless conflict fueled by ignorance and distrust, the spiritual war manifesting itself through the struggles faced by humanity every day. The realization struck me like a lightning bolt. We are all called to awaken, to challenge the constructs that bind us, and to pursue the truth that can set us free. As I returned to consciousness amidst the buzz of the emergency room, I was overwhelmed with emotion. The clarity of my experience lingered, but the weight of what I had seen filled me with both urgency and dread. I realized I couldn't continue to practice medicine the way I had before. I needed to share the revelations I had received, confront the spiritual war that raged not only around me but within me. My thoughts raced as I considered the implications of embracing this truth. Could I guide others toward awakening without alienating those around me? Would they understand the importance of standing against deception that kept us all powerless? In the weeks that followed, fear and determination danced within me. I felt compelled to initiate conversations about faith and truth, opening dialogues with colleagues, friends, and patients. Each struggle I encountered became an opportunity to share insights about the love and message of Jesus, urging others to awaken from their slumber. I realized that the journey would be riddled with challenges, yet the power of truth, the very essence of healing, was worth every risk I faced. As I forged ahead, I understood that I was no longer just a doctor. I was a messenger, committed to shining a light in the darkness of a world craving connection and understanding. I've dedicated my life to medicine, serving as a respected Muslim doctor in one of Los Angeles' busiest hospitals. Friends and colleagues often commend my dedication and skill, but beneath the surface, I feel a weariness that I can't shake off. Each day I walk through the bright halls of the ER, surrounded by the sounds of life and chaos, yet I often feel emotionally distant, grappling with a profound sense of emptiness. Despite my adherence to my beliefs and practices, there's an internal conflict that gnaws at me, a struggle between the comfort of tradition and the growing dissatisfaction with the meaning it offers. In my quiet moments, especially after long shifts, I start to question the essence of my faith. I find myself wondering if my strict adherence to Islamic principles is truly fulfilling or simply a way to navigate life. The rituals feel increasingly hollow, and each prayer can feel like an obligation rather than a heartfelt connection to God. I've seen countless lives saved, and yet, when I come home to the silence of my empty apartment, the lingering echo of my doubts returns, filling the void with anxiety and despair. I long for something more, something beyond the confines of doctrines that seem to limit rather than liberate. The turning point came when I fell ill unexpectedly. What started as fatigue quickly spiraled into a heart attack. In those moments of crisis, I slipped into a near-death experience that would forever alter the course of my life. It's difficult to describe the sensation of leaving my body behind, of floating in a darkness that was simultaneously frightening and strangely serene. But then, a brilliant light appeared, illuminating the void, and from that light, I encountered Jesus. His presence radiated peace, a love so profound that it enveloped me, washing away the doubts that had plagued my heart. In that transcendent moment, Jesus shared revelations that struck me to my core, shedding light on the hidden agendas that govern our world. I witnessed how the elite manipulate truths, creating deception not just within religious contexts, but across all facets of society. I saw how societal constructs and division were tools used to manipulate the masses, keeping us in a constant state of fear and conflict. The spiritual war one had felt was real, an unrelenting battle for truth and understanding, fought in the hearts and minds of all humanity. The clarity of those revelations filled me with urgency. I realized that this awakening I experienced was meant not just for me, but for others ensnared in false narratives. As I returned to consciousness in the hospital, the enormity of my experience weighed heavily on me. I knew I could no longer abide by the comfortable silence of my previous life. My calling was clear. I needed to share what I had learned, to speak out against the very industries and ideologies that perpetuated division and deception. However, the fear of rejection loomed over me like a storm cloud. How would my family and community respond to my new perspective? The thought of being cast out or labeled a traitor for my faith terrified me. Yet I couldn't ignore the truth I had witnessed. The reality of my spiritual awakening demanded action, and I felt an undeniable motivation to step forward, ready to confront whatever challenges lay ahead. In my life as a doctor, I always believed I was following a clear path. A path defined by my faith, my family, and my commitment to healing. Yet over time, a deep and unsettling doubt began to take root within me, especially during moments of prayer. Each time I tried to connect with God, I felt a growing disconnection, as though an invisible wall had suddenly risen between us. In the critical moments of my work, when lives hung in the balance, I found myself questioning not just my decisions, but the very essence of my faith. Was my commitment truly grounded in love and understanding, or was it merely a tool of control, a mechanism to keep me compliant? These thoughts began to haunt me, intertwining with nightmares that plagued my sleep. I would wake in a cold sweat, visions of chaos and despair swirling in my mind. During these horror-filled nights, I couldn't shake the suspicion that religion, while offering community and comfort, also served to bind us, to keep us from seeing the fuller picture of truth. It felt as if I were trapped in a cycle where hope was twisted into fear, where loyalty to tradition veiled the deeper spiritual understanding I craved. I wanted to believe, yet every prayer felt more like a submission to a system than a genuine expression of faith. Then, everything changed during one particularly busy night in the ER. As I was rushing to stabilize a critically injured patient, I felt the familiar weight of exhaustion drown me. In that moment of vulnerability, I collapsed, slipping into a state that can only be described as a near-death experience. Instead of the cold, sterile environment of the hospital, I found myself surrounded by radiant light, suspended in a space devoid of time and fear. It was here I encountered Jesus, a figure whose very presence radiated warmth and love, inviting me to step closer into the light of understanding. As I approached, I felt a flood of revelation washing over me. Jesus spoke, not in words but through an overwhelming sense of truth that permeated my being. In that unwavering light, I was shown the hidden agendas at play in our world, the manipulation by the elite who thrive on our fears and divisions. I witnessed the spiritual unfolding, a battle fought not just within me but affecting humanity as a whole. Wars ignited by ideologies, leaders exploiting the vulnerability of their people, it became painfully clear how easy it is for us to be led astray from the path of love and unity. When I returned to consciousness, the impact of my experience left me shaken but resolute. I had seen the truth that lay beneath the layers of deception, and I understood that the call to share that truth was paramount. I began to reflect on the spiritual awakening I had undergone, not just for myself, but for others still trapped in the narratives that kept them divided. My journey was no longer just about my own understanding. It was about awakening others to the shared struggle against deception. Yet, fear crept back in. What would my family think? How could I navigate a world that might not accept this newfound perspective? But I knew now that the urgency to act outweighed the fear of rejection. The path ahead was daunting, but the truth I had encountered was a beacon urging me into the light, ready to illuminate the way for those still in darkness. In a dramatic turn of events, my life was interrupted by a severe accident that I never saw coming. One moment, I was driving home after a long shift at the hospital, my mind preoccupied with the cases I had handled that day. The next, everything went dark. I don't even remember the crash, just the sudden absence of sound and light. What happened next was like stepping into a realm I had never imagined, a dark and oppressive space that felt both isolating and terrifying. In that clinical death, I was suspended in a liminal state between life and what lay beyond. As I drifted in this dark realm, a sense of confusion engulfed me. My thoughts raced as I tried to grasp what had happened, but the absence of my physical body left me feeling untethered. It was a haunting experience, as if I were caught in a web where time and reality no longer existed. Then, amid that overwhelming darkness, I encountered an apparition of Jesus. His light cut through the shadows like a beacon of hope. He called me by name, and in that moment, a wave of warmth washed over me, pushing back the fear that clung to my spirit. Through his presence, the darkness began to recede, revealing a stark truth I had long ignored. In that sacred space, Jesus illuminated the hidden agendas that plagued our world, a spiritual war playing out in the hearts and minds of humanity. I felt the weight of the deception that had been woven throughout society, understanding how the elite manipulate narratives to maintain control over people's beliefs. I saw glimpses of conflict and division that stemmed from fear, the very factors that keep us engulfed in ignorance. Each vision felt uncomfortably real, exposing the layers of lies that had imprisoned us in a cycle of suffering. The urgency of his message resonated profoundly within me. I realized that this awakening wasn't just a personal journey. It was a call to others who were still wandering in the dark, unaware of the spiritual war that raged all around them. I saw how desperately I wanted people to break free from the confines of their beliefs, to embrace the love and truth that Jesus offered. I caught a glimpse of what could be, a world marked by connection and understanding, where the chains of deception no longer held sway over our lives. My heart ached with the realization that I had to share this message no matter the cost. As I returned to consciousness, gasping for air and overwhelmed by the bright lights of the ER, I felt the weight of my experience settle heavily upon my heart. I couldn't shake the feeling that my journey had only just begun. The encounter with Jesus and the revelations I received demanded that I act. What if this truth could spark an awakening in others? I understood it wouldn't be easy. Fear and skepticism loomed large in my thoughts. But the call to reveal the truth and help others navigate this spiritual war was undeniable. In that moment, I made a silent vow, not only to seek my path, but to become a guide for others still ensnared in deception. The awakening had begun, and I was ready to share what I had learned. When I awoke from that near-death experience, the world around me felt strangely unfamiliar. My heart raced as I opened my eyes to the sterile brightness of the hospital emergency room, surrounded by worried faces. I could sense their relief, mixed with curiosity, but underneath that, I felt the creeping shadow of scorn and judgment lurking just beyond my immediate surroundings. I had returned to life, but the price of my awakening was becoming painfully clear. Sharing my experience with Jesus, a revelation that had reshaped my very essence, left me branded a heretic by my own family and colleagues. I felt the weight of their disapproval bearing down on me, intensifying my growing sense of isolation. The conversations that followed were tense, filled with disbelief and disdain. My family, people I had once leaned on for support, turned their backs when I dared to speak of my faith in Jesus. They couldn't fathom how I could abandon the beliefs I had upheld for so long. "Traitor," they called me. "You've been misled, and you're spreading dangerous ideas." Each word struck like a blow, sending shards of guilt through my heart. I wanted to explain the depths of my experience, the love and light I encountered during that transformative moment, but the fear of losing my connection to them held me back. I found myself torn between the truth I had embraced and the bonds that seemed to unravel before my eyes. The isolation was suffocating. I would go to work as a doctor, a respected figure in my field, and yet feel like a ghost in a world that had suddenly become hostile. My colleagues who once respected me now viewed me with a mix of skepticism and concern. They openly questioned my judgment, concerned that my newfound beliefs might affect my professionalism. I could sense their fear, mirroring my own, as if any hint of spiritual awakening might jeopardize everything we had built, both in our careers and in the relationships we shared. The pressure was immense, and I often found myself wrestling with feelings of hopelessness and despair. Yet, the memories of that encounter with Jesus persisted, lighting the way through my darkest moments. I knew that the spiritual war one had glimpsed was real, and the revelations I had received demanded action. My experience opened my eyes to the hidden agenda masking the truth, a deception that seemed embedded in our societal structures. I felt compelled to share my experience, to urge others to awaken to the lies that kept us divided and enslaved in fear. But each time I considered reaching out, anxiety washed over me, reminding me of the possible fallout. How could I stand boldly for truth and risk everything? As I grappled with these internal conflicts, a flicker of determination ignited within me. I refused to allow fear to dictate my life any longer. I began to seek out others who were also searching for deeper truths, individuals willing to challenge the narratives that held us captive. In clandestine meetings, we shared our burdens and the struggles we each faced in our pursuits of awakening. It was there that I found a community, a camaraderie born from the understanding that we were all part of the larger spiritual war. Together we forged a path toward healing and enlightenment, echoing the urgency of awakening that Jesus had instilled in me during my near-death experience. The journey was far from easy, but I felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. I was determined to fight against the deception that threatened to consume us all, knowing that the truth must guide our way. As I began to explore the Bible in secret, a mixture of fear and hope washed over me. The feeling of going against the grain of my upbringing was suffocating, but the pull toward understanding the teachings of Jesus was undeniable. I found solace in the quiet hours of the night when I could immerse myself in scriptures without fear of judgment. Each passage I read felt like a lifeline, drawing me closer to a truth I had been yearning for, a truth that seemed to illuminate the shadows of my internal struggle. The stark contrast between the rigid confines of my previous beliefs and the boundless love offered by Jesus felt like a revelation that cut through the confusion I'd been living with. I also discovered online communities filled with individuals who shared their testimonies of transformation. Hearing their stories was cathartic. These were people who had once felt lost, just like me. And their experiences of awakening sparked a flicker of hope in my heart. It was empowering to know that I wasn't alone in this journey. The bond we shared in seeking understanding helped alleviate some of the burdens I carried daily. Each conversation, each shared experience reassured me that awakening was indeed possible, even if it meant stepping away from everything I had ever known. However, even as I found moments of renewed peace, anxiety tangled with those feelings. The deeper I delved into my exploration of faith, the more I felt the looming shadow of loss. I feared losing my family, my culture, and the security that my previous life afforded me. My parents, siblings, and friends were my world. They were steeped in tradition and expectation, and the thought of deviating from that path felt like betrayal. Yet the comfort I found in my moments of prayer with Jesus urged me forward. I prayed silently for guidance, grappling with a desire to be true to myself while longing for acceptance from my loved ones. As my resolve to explore Christianity deepened, the decision of baptism loomed large in my mind. I knew it would symbolize a definitive break from my past and a full embrace of the truth I had come to identify with. Each potential step forward felt monumental, and the stakes were impossibly high. Would my family understand? Could they accept this transformation, or would they see it as a rejection of all that they had taught me? Every thought spiraled into another wave of anxiety, battling against the peace I felt in my heart. The tension between these conflicting emotions became a constant companion. In moments of anxious contemplation, I reflected on the spiritual war that seemed to span beyond my personal struggles. I recognized that the hidden agendas of the elite shape our belief systems, crafting narratives meant to divide us. These revelations resonated deeply, fueling my determination to not only seek my own awakening, but to help others find theirs as well. I wanted to break through the barriers of deception that held so many captive. As I navigated this crucial juncture in my life, I felt an undeniable urgency to act. It was becoming increasingly clear that my journey wasn't just about me alone. It was about waking up to the greater truth that Jesus had illuminated before me, and I was ready to engage in that fight, even if it meant losing everything I once held dear. Strengthened in my faith, I've come to view my near-death experience as a divine calling, a pivotal moment that compelled me to confront the realities of spiritual warfare. The chaos of the emergency room had become a battleground of sorts, filled with life and death decisions that often left me questioning not just my medical judgment, but the very foundation of my beliefs. Each time I put on my scrubs, I felt the weight of expectation, both from myself and my community. But after that life-altering encounter with Jesus, everything shifted. I recognized my purpose was far more profound than I had ever imagined. In the aftermath of my experience, the truths I gleaned from my encounter became a fire within me. Jesus illuminated the hidden agenda behind the manipulation of power, the elite structures that thrive on division and fear perpetuated by deception. I saw how these forces stifled the truth, crafting narratives that kept us from seeing the bigger picture. It's easy to get lost in the day-to-day grind, especially in a world filled with noise, but I felt compelled to break my silence and share what I had learned. The spiritual war was real, and it was time for me to take a stand. Yet, with each passing day, the fear of facing the consequences of my newfound beliefs grew stronger. I wrestled with the reality that speaking out could lead to a rift between my family and me, a fracture that might sever the bonds I cherished. The thought of being labeled a traitor by those I loved felt like a dark cloud overshadowing my commitment to the truth. Nevertheless, I knew I couldn't ignore the awakening I had felt, nor could I shy away from the responsibility that came with it. My heart ached as I considered the cost, but the urgency to guide others toward their awakening overwhelmed that fear. I began quietly seeking out others who had experienced similar awakenings, engaging in conversations that felt both risky and liberating. Each shared story reinforced my determination to speak out. We were part of a larger collective experience, all searching for understanding in a world rife with confusion. The more I connected with fellow seekers, the more hopeful I became. Together we discussed the impact of the manipulation we face daily, highlighting the spiritual battles that played out in our lives and the way they affected our connections to one another. It became evident that the change I sought couldn't happen in isolation. Through this journey, I felt Jesus guiding me forward, urging me to share the revelations about the spiritual war in ways that resonate with others. I envisioned gatherings where we could openly discuss faith, doubt, and the awakening we all craved. The potential to create a place of refuge for those grappling with their beliefs filled me with a sense of purpose. While I was still fearful of what my family might think, I felt increasingly fortified by my experiences and the bonds I was forging. The path ahead promised to be fraught with complexity, yet in each moment of doubt, I found clarity in the truth I had encountered. It was time to step out of the shadows and embrace this calling fully, no matter the cost. The moment I decided to leave my former life behind was both terrifying and exhilarating. After everything I had experienced, my near-death encounter with Jesus, the powerful revelations that followed, staying in a place that felt increasingly confined was simply not an option anymore. I could no longer ignore the call that resonated within me, urging me to step into a new role as an evangelist. It was a decision steeped in both anxiety and hope, as I understood the magnitude of the challenge ahead. Leaving behind the life I had known, the career I had built, and the relationships that defined me was not a decision made lightly. The fear of potential repercussions loomed large. I had witnessed how my community might react to someone who abandoned their established faith for a new path. I almost felt like I was walking away from a part of myself, and the potential isolation was daunting. Yet, amid those swirling doubts, a profound freedom flickered in my spirit. I held on to the conviction that the spiritual war one had glimpsed during my experience was not just my battle. It was a call to arms for all who felt trapped within false narratives and lies. The truth was powerful, and I felt a deep commitment to share it, no matter the personal sacrifices I might face. As I began to share my story, I found small pockets of acceptance, the whispers of understanding among those who were also seeking a deeper connection to their faith. Each conversation deepened my resolve, reinforcing that I was not alone in this journey. My testimony had the potential to inspire awakenings in others, to shine a light on the hidden agendas that drove fear and division in society. I spoke of the manipulation orchestrated by the elite, revealing how they perpetuated deception to maintain control over the masses. It was liberating to finally speak about the spiritual realities I had encountered, to encourage others to confront their own doubts and find the truth within. Yet I still faced the quiet ache of longing for my estranged family. I often contemplated how I might bridge the gap between our beliefs. Would they ever understand the depth of my journey? Each interaction filled with their disappointment cut deep, yet I remained steadfast in my mission to share the love and truth I found in Jesus. He had opened my eyes to the world's complexity, showing me how easily we can become ensnared by fear if we let the spiritual war dictate our lives. The desire for familial reconciliation remained, but the urgency to continue my work grew stronger with each passing day. Stepping into the role of an evangelist ignited a fire within me that couldn't be extinguished. I felt more alive than I had ever felt, immersed in encounters with others hungry for understanding and connection. Together, we explored the depths of faith and the barriers that kept us divided. The awakening was not just mine, it was collective, unfolding in layers as others began to grasp the truth hidden beneath the surface of societal deception. I recognized that my journey had become a beacon for them, a testament to the transformative power that comes from embracing the light of Jesus. The road ahead was filled with both challenges and opportunities, and I felt an unwavering commitment to guide others towards the same awakening I had experienced, ready to face whatever trials lay in wait. Years after my near-death experience, I found myself settling into a new community, one that offered a refuge for those grappling with their own crises of faith. It was a place where individuals could freely explore their doubts and share their struggles without fear of judgment. My journey had transformed me in ways I had never anticipated, and my testimony became a vital part of the healing process for many seeking deeper spiritual truths. The experiences I had encountered during my spiritual awakening served as a guiding light, helping others navigate their own paths through the darkness of confusion and uncertainty. As I gathered with fellow seekers, a collective energy filled the room, a mixture of hope, curiosity, and determination. I'd often share my story, vulnerable yet resolute, emphasizing how my encounter with Jesus had opened my eyes to the spiritual war that raged around us. I spoke of the hidden agendas that the elite perpetuated to control our thoughts and beliefs, how they maneuvered to keep us divided while feeding off our fears. Each revelation I shared served as a reminder that the fight for truth is essential, for we are often blinded by the deceptions that surround us. In these meetings, I watched lives transform. People who once felt lost in their beliefs began to awaken, empowered to question the narratives they had accepted without scrutiny. The stories of struggle became tales of resilience as the individuals embraced their awakening. Together, we analyzed the societal dynamics at play, how the manipulation of information and culture creates further division among us. We began to realize that it wasn't just a personal journey, it was a communal effort to reclaim the truth that had been distorted. Despite the joy of helping others, the longing for reconciliation with my family drummed quietly in the background of my heart. I often thought about the distance that had formed between us since I embraced this new faith. My parents, friends, and loved ones had raised me within a certain framework of beliefs. The fear of how they would receive my testimony weighed heavily on me. Would they see my transformation as a betrayal? Or could they understand that my seeking of truth was rooted in love, not rejection? This internal struggle persisted as I balanced my commitment to support the awakening of others while nurturing the hope of one day reconnecting with my family. As I stepped into this new life dedicated to sharing the gospel, the urgency of my mission became clearer. I realized that by sharing my story, I wasn't just advocating for myself. I was echoing the voices of countless others who felt trapped in a cycle of deception. I felt Jesus guiding me through this journey, urging me to keep pushing forward, despite the personal risks involved. The path would not be easy. The challenge of confronting the forces that seek to divide us is ongoing. Yet each time I spoke the truth, my heart filled with renewed courage, and my spirit soared. I had embarked on a mission not just for my awakening, but for everyone grappling with the shadows of doubt, striving to emerge into the light of truth. My journey as a doctor in the bustling emergency room of Los Angeles was one of dedication and duty. Each day I stood at the intersection of life and death, making split-second decisions that could save or condemn. I had always taken pride in my ability to bring healing to those in need, but as the years wore on, I found myself feeling increasingly confined by my own beliefs. The rituals of my faith felt more like chains than a source of liberation. I struggled silently, feeling an aching emptiness that I couldn't quite articulate, even during the most critical moments of my work. Then, everything changed in an instant. One night, a frantic flurry of activity engulfed the ER when I suffered a heart attack. As the lights dimmed around me, I slipped into a state of clinical death. In that unresponsive void, I found myself transported to a surreal realm, blanketed in an intense darkness that seemed to pulsate with energy. It was in that darkness that I encountered Jesus. His figure emerged like a bright star piercing the night, radiating a warmth and love that enveloped me, unraveling the confusion and doubt that had haunted me for so long. In that sacred moment, Jesus called me by name, and I felt an overwhelming surge of understanding wash over me. He revealed truths about the spiritual war that raged not only within my own heart, but throughout the world. I instantly recognized the hidden agenda behind the manipulation of our realities, the elite twisting narratives to maintain power, using division and deception as tools to keep us entangled in fear. I saw how conflicts and wars were often instigated by those who profited from chaos, how they sowed distrust among communities to distract us from the truth. As I absorbed this revelation, I felt a profound sense of urgency. How could I return to my life without sharing what I had learned? The truth I received wasn't just for me. It demanded to be passed on, to awaken others who remained trapped in the lies of their existence. Yet, after I returned to consciousness, all those feelings of joy were overshadowed by paranoia and fear. Would my family understand my new faith? Would I be cast aside for embracing beliefs that diverged from the traditions I had known? The thought of losing their love weighed heavily on my heart, even as I felt an insatiable need to stand for what I now believed in. Driven by this internal conflict, I began to explore the Bible quietly, devouring teachings and hearing testimonies about the journeys others had taken. Each story I discovered mirrored my own struggles, filled with tenacity and hope. I found a supportive online community of former Muslims who had also encountered Jesus, and their wisdom inspired me to embrace my own path. Gathering my courage, I started to envision sharing my experiences openly, despite the risks involved. I understood the challenges I might face: scorn from my community, rejection from my family, but the spiritual awakening I had experienced offered a compelling resolution. The truth must be shared to shine light on the hidden deceptions that bind us. My heart raced as I prepared to face the spiritual war ahead, ready to be a voice for the awakening I had come to embody. Now that you've journeyed through my story, I have to ask you something deeply personal. Have you ever experienced a moment that changed everything for you? A sliver of time when the veil of reality was lifted, revealing a deeper truth beneath the surface of everyday life? Like you, I was once engulfed in confusion, torn between the demands of tradition and the undeniable call of a love that shattered my old beliefs. After brushing the edges of death, I emerged forever transformed. My life as a doctor presented daily confrontations with pain and suffering, yet it was not until I stood in the presence of Jesus that I grasped the profound spiritual war enveloping us. I witnessed the hidden agenda, the deception spun by those who thrive on division and ignorance. This isn't just a personal battle, but a universal cry for awakening. The urgency to rise above lies and embrace the truth resonates not only within me, but calls to each of you. Will you answer? I invite you to share your reflections. Have you ever felt that tug towards something greater? A truth that beckons from the depths of your spirit? Comment below. Your experiences matter. Your voice is vital in this collective awakening. And if this message ignited something within you, don't leave without subscribing to Truth from Beyond and activating the notification bell. We have much more ahead. Insights that could transform your understanding of faith and existence as they did mine. Your journey alongside us is crucial as we delve deeper into the mysteries that unite us all. Stay tuned for our next video, where we explore another powerful testimony, one that could change your perspective forever. I'm Ahmad, and I thank you for sharing this moment with me. Remember, the truth is a light that beckons to those brave enough to seek it. Keep looking, and you may just find it waiting for you.